and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share a little bit more about me and my career. So I hope you all enjoy it.
All right, thank you. Can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, everybody. My name is Diane Ferreira. I've been an HR professional for over 15 years now, and I'm happy to share a little bit more about myself and my career. I was born and raised in Brazil, beautiful country. I know I'm biased because I'm from there, but it is true. If you've been there, you know it. Yeah, I would be probably disowned as a Brazilian if I said I did not follow soccer. And so, yes, I am a soccer fan. I do not follow every single game throughout the year, but I am a sucker for the World Cup. And so I have my Brazilian flags. Hello. But typically, no, I'm not much of a sports person. But again, as a native Brazilian, it is embedded. It's part of our DNA that we love soccer. And we are diehard fans when it comes to the World Cup at the very least. And I've come to the U.S. To study, and I've got my bachelor's degree out of Dallas Baptist University in, you guessed it, Dallas, Texas. And I've got my master's in organizational leadership out of New Hampshire University, Southern New Hampshire University. And well, you guessed it again, New Hampshire. And I'll share a little bit more soon over how I got to Dallas and how I got from Dallas all the way out to New Hampshire.
So you mentioned that you are Brazilian. You also at some point grew up and studied in the U.S. Can you please tell us a little bit more about your education?
I got my bachelor's degree in business management. And the initial idea really was to go for a broader degree, something that I could eventually later on decide where I wanted my career to land. And so it seemed like a pretty much of a blank canvas in a way that I could work off of. And shortly before graduation, I found my passion for HR in one of the classes that I took. And the professor was actually an HR professional herself. And she taught in her spare time. And she shared a lot of information around her challenges, success stories. She shared so much about her career, and it gave me that fascination for the world of HR beyond what I knew. When I first started the class, what I knew about HR was, those are the people that, help you fill out your application. And those are the people who will help you get your benefits started. And after that class, I realized that there was so much more to the HR world. That was a turning point for me. And that's how I got started into HR. Shortly after, before graduation, but shortly after that class, I was able to, I received a great opportunity from an organization where I could get my foot in the door and get started into the HR world. Moving on from there, I realized I wanted to learn more and I wanted to specialize a little bit more. And that's how I got my master's degree in organizational leadership through Southern New Hampshire University. And really the idea there was to really focus on how do we put all the pieces of the puzzle together? Again, looking at a broader aspect of human resources and how do we really focus on true organizational leadership to drive business forward, again, beyond the traditional aspects that most people think about when they think about HR, of the, again, benefits and payroll and those things that are very, very, very important. But that we want to make sure that we don't limit our thinking of the HR department and HR function in an organization just to those pieces of the puzzle.
All right, that was interesting. Thank you for sharing. And what were your first work experiences?
So that's a very interesting question. When I say that I got an opportunity to get my foot in the door and learn about HR, the position I had, my very first position, was a split position. I was the office admin. I was the HR assistant, and I did a little bit of everything. And that gave me a very good opportunity to understand more about the business. And I would not regret that. And if I had to do it again, I would. But I will say that because that foot in the door was so mixed, it held me back a little bit in the beginning from learning more about HR. It helped me learn a lot about the business, and I'm very appreciative of that. It helped me in my HR career. But if I had to change one thing, it probably would have been to really focus on learning more of the HR piece first. Nonetheless, that came eventually. One interesting thing about my first position in that world really was that I was working for an organization that didn't have a fully structured HR department. And so I did not have a full onboarding training process focused in HR only. So I had to learn how to find resources on my own and attend work classes and go to networking events. Fortunately, I was working for an organization that really provided a lot of opportunities and gave me the space and the freedom to really focus on that. And I was reporting to a wonderful person who I still am friends with to this day, 15 years later. And he gave me a safe space to make mistakes and learn from my mistakes. And he was very supportive of me learning and developing my career, and gave me an opportunity when I didn't know anything, really, and helping me, give me that safe space to learn and to develop as a professional. And I was with that organization for a number of years, and I grew within the organization. Again, they afforded me excellent opportunities to grow in my career. And by the time I left that organization, I was a regional HR manager for one of their largest regions in the country. So to go from an HR assistant / office admin / everything else to really hold on to really support an HR function for one of their largest regions was a privilege to me. And I'm forever grateful for the opportunities that organization had.
So right now you have a senior position in HR, actually, and you are a senior HR manager. So what other position have you been through before reaching this current position?
My career was not linear. I know most people think of their careers as, I'm going to go through step 1 and then 2 and then 3, and it follows a certain order. And sometimes it does happen. It doesn't happen for everybody. It doesn't happen the same for everybody. It certainly was not the case for me. My career has been a bit of a roller coaster in the best way possible. And the reason why I say that, it's because I've held different titles, and different titles in different organizations have completely different meanings. And so I went from an HR assistant to a generalist to a manager to a senior manager, over again to a manager, and again, just navigating that manager, director, senior manager type of roles. But the responsibility and the scope of the roles have been so different that it afforded me an opportunity to see how each organization runs. It gave me an appreciation for the fact that it is more about the work that you do than the actual title. And it gave me an appreciation for organizations that do or do not understand how a true, robust HR function works and the value that it provides to an organization. So throughout my career, I've been able to see a variety of, again, levels of involvement and support and value that an organization places into the HR function, and the kind of value that I was able to provide based on that. And so with that in mind, it's one advice that I provide to just about anybody who will ask me getting into the HR world, even the folks reporting to me early on in their career. My advice to them is don't be blinded by titles. Focus on what does the day-to-day look like. Focus on understanding what you're good at, what you're passionate about, because that is going to drive your impact into what the organization is looking for, the future of the organization, again, beyond what you might think that might be important today. So explore all the opportunities, focus more on the experiences, learn from those experiences, and then make a decision on where do you want to land. Do you want to specialize in something, or do you want to be more of a generalist? And when I say generalist, I don't mean the title. I mean a professional that is looking at HR from a broader perspective and really wants to have that broader outlook into their day-to-day versus somebody who specializes in, say, payroll, for example, or somebody who specializes in benefits. So my best advice throughout what I've seen throughout my career is don't be blinded by titles, focus on the experiences and find out where your passion is.
So this is something that I ask to everyone that comes to the show. Do you have a good memory in your career?
I think my happiest memories has been related to people development. And again, going outside a little bit of the traditional focus that most people think about when they think about the human resources function. When you think more about the people development, to me, that's what brings me the most fun memories. And that is related to really focusing on how do we help somebody find their path, their passion? How do we help them grow in their career, right? And a lot of times it is tough love, right? A lot of times it's really just giving them the space to make their mistakes and learn. And really the happiest memories I have are from people who worked for me under my my supervision, under my management, under my leadership, and seeing them grow and seeing how their strengths have been really highlighted and see how much better than me they are in a lot of cases, right? And so it brings me joy when I can look at somebody who, again, started reporting to me and they don't report to me anymore. They are very successful in their careers. And it brings me joy to look at them and say, I'm going to have to delegate this to you. You own this now because you are so much better than I am in this aspect. So you take care of this. And it brings me great joy to know that I had, even if it's a small part, in bringing that out of them and helping them flourish and help them succeed. So those are my happiest memories throughout my career, has been the cases when I've been able to say, you're way ahead of me on this one. You're much better than me. Congratulations. Fly, have your career and be successful.
Correct. And what about the bad memory?
I believe in business in general, not just HR, right? In HR particularly, just because of the sensitive nature of the work that we do, it is very important that there's alignment. And at times there's misalignment, perhaps gaps in communication or gaps in messages or ideas. And it happens, right? The challenge becomes how we're going to address that. And I usually, and you can ask just about anybody who has ever reported to me, they will tell you that one of the things that I preach a lot and I practice a lot is behind closed doors, we can disagree and we can have those conversations and we can challenge each other. It doesn't matter that you report to me. I'm open to being challenged too. But the moment a decision is made, we're stacking hands on it. We go outside, open those doors, go outside, and we're speaking the same language. We're sending the same message. We're behaving the same. And the reason for that, it's because, again, in organizations, it is very important that there is clarity and there is unity and there's standards when we're providing messages to employees in general. So if you think about your career or anybody watching or listening to this podcast, if you think about the days when you've been frustrated at work because perhaps your boss is telling you something and then your boss's boss is saying something different and then your colleague is saying something different. And then another function is saying something different. And you're sitting there thinking, I don't know what to listen to because everybody's saying something different. What am I supposed to do? It is frustrating. It's disheartening. It creates confusion. It creates challenges for the business. And we're likely going to have to clean up a mess later. And so one thing that is very important for organizations in general, whether you are in HR, finance, IT, whatever department you're on, if you're running operations, having that alignment is extremely important. And I remember cases where I've had somebody on my team very vocal about disagreeing on a decision. And again, same policy, right? Decision has been made. We're stacking hands on it, and we're going to say the same message. And I later found out that someone was going completely against what we all agreed to. And I had to bring that person in and say, listen, I respect your opinion. Your point is valid. That said, our agreement was stack hands on it, speak the same message. If there is still a challenge, we need to talk behind closed doors. But it is, again, frustrating and disheartening for employees to be hearing two different messages from the same department, right? And even from the leaders of the organization. And so that is one thing that I try and avoid as much as I can. It's something that I would like to not have it happen ever again. And it is something that, again, it's my advice to a lot of my colleagues, especially if they're in leadership roles and they have teams reporting to them, to have that conversation, to have that clear expectation of how important alignment is, even for the employees, right? Right. Behind closed doors, have your disagreements, have your challenges. It's important that we challenge the people that we work with and work for. It's important because through the challenges, that's how we learn more. But again, once a decision is made, it is very important that everybody is speaking the same language.
So now, following the path of your career in HR, do you have any key situation, achievement, or even challenge um, that made you think, or do you think that was key in your career to become who you are today?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. I don't know if we had all day, we probably could sit here and talk all day about that. There were very good experiences and very challenging experiences that have shaped how I behave as an HR professional and as a leader. And from a HR professional standpoint, my first challenge that, again, I do not regret one bit, was being with an organization that didn't have that structure. I had to figure things out. I had to learn for myself. I need to go find which classes I needed to take, or which webinars or seminars or networking events. And it would have absolutely been wonderful to have had a different experience. And I try to promote that to my team to make sure that anybody coming into the organization has the best onboarding experience. But that challenge has helped me think outside the box. It has taught me that nobody owes you anything. You are responsible for your own development. It is wonderful that organizations will offer that, but in the end, you own your own development. And whether you're getting the tools that you need to shape your professional experience, whether you're getting that from the company or whether you're searching for that yourself and building that yourself and paying for that yourself, in the end, it comes down to you own your career. You're the person who's going to make it or break it. And so that helped me be more resilient as a professional. And there's been several more challenges throughout my career, and they all taught me something different, right? I've had challenges with the first time that I became a leader, a people leader, and I had somebody reporting to me, and really understanding that barrier of having somebody reporting to you does not mean that you have to be closed off. It does not mean that you can't have a relationship with that person. It does not mean that you can't build that personal rapport with that person, right? I grew up, going back to how I was raised, my parents owned businesses, and they were always very clear on there needs to be a wall, right? If they report to you, they're not your friend. And that's what I grew up hearing. And so that shaped how I behaved when I first had employees reporting to me. And I learned the hard way, unfortunately, through having employees being, again, disheartened and not happy about the environment, and just doing some soul searching on why did the person leave? And was I rude? Was I mean? Did I say something wrong? And really just looking internally, what could I have done differently? And then seeking that feedback. What do you think I could have done differently? And not everybody is as open with the feedback. And some folks will say, oh, no, everything's fine. But you know that it isn't, because if it was, the person would have not left. And but every so often I would meet somebody who would say, I'm transferring departments, or I'm not happy. I'm not leaving, but I'm not super excited. And I would say, hit me, right? And that's usually what I tell my people. I say, hit me. Go ahead. I can take it. And through the honest, raw feedback, I've learned that, having that wall, it really causes people to feel that, I'm learning. Yes, you're giving me good feedback. Yes, you're nice, but I feel like I don't know you. And we don't have a relationship other than you, my boss, and you tell me what to do. And so I've learned that if you truly want to be a good leader, you need to build that relationship with your employees. Obviously, there's a degree of separation, right? But there's nothing wrong with building that relationship with your employees. And that taught me a lot. And I will be forever grateful to that feedback, because it helped me, again, look inside and think about what can I do differently to help the people reporting to me. One thing that I've also learned, on the other hand, was really just reporting to leaders who did not have my back and would find any opportunity to throw me under the bus. And I realized through that experience that I did not ever want somebody reporting to me to feel that way. It did not feel good. I did not want anybody reporting to me to feel that way. And so I've always had that idea that a leader defends their employees, right? And again, we can disagree behind closed doors. That's a whole different conversation. But if you're reporting to me, I'm here for you, and I'm here to defend you, and I'm here to fight for you, and I'm here to help you. It's not just about telling you what to do. It's about supporting you, right? There is, a while ago, there's this concept of leaders eat last. And the concept really is exactly what you're thinking, right? You feed everybody else, you feed yourself last. You take care of your people. That's what you do, right? You become the air coverage for them, right? If things are coming down, we always talk about how stuff rolls downhill, right? If things are coming down, you become that first layer of protection to support them so that they have that safe space to grow and learn and become better professionals that way.
So now let's talk about your day-to-day work. How is your team composed?
So I currently have 5 direct reports and 4 more indirect reports. And that is based on, again, the structure that the organization is set up under, to where I have responsibility over a region. Within that region, there are several locations, and the locations are, again, under the umbrella of my direct reports. For them to be able to be effective in their roles, some of them have direct reports of their own, and that's how the structure is set up.
And what about how they work? Is it a hybrid system, remote work? How do you deal with it?
So it's interesting. The hybrid work environment question is very interesting, because it is, you will see different answers to that question depending on which area of the HR function you look at. For roles, there are what we call customer facing. And by that, I don't mean your traditional customer service, right? What I mean is our internal customers, right? The leaders that we support, the employees that we support. The employees, the organizational leaders, those are our internal client. So client-facing roles where you will have to have that face-to-face interaction. Most employees are either working 100% in the office or in some sort of a hybrid schedule, depending, again, on the scope of their role and the location where they sit. If you look at areas where it's not a customer-facing role, then things change a little bit. It's a lot easier to have a remote environment when you are working with, say, systems, right? HR systems. It's not a customer-facing role. And so you will see, as you navigate through this and as you speak with other HR professionals, even in your day-to-day, what you're going to see is that there's a mixed approach, because there is no one-size-fits-all. Because if you do apply that one-size-fits-all umbrella, you're going to miss out on something. You're either going to be missing out on the internal client interaction, or you're going to miss out on employee retention, as the employees in the HR function with non-customer facing roles will think to themselves, if it doesn't matter where I sit, or if I'm in an office and 90% of the time I'm staring at my computer, then does it matter? And so the employee retention is impacted by that as well. And organizations today are struggling to find that right balance. Some organizations are saying all remote. Some are saying all in the office. Some are saying hybrid. Which one is the best approach? There is no black and white answer to that, because the organization needs to work with what makes sense for them. The HR functions within those organizations need to work with what makes sense for them within the centers of excellence they have, how they are structured, how they're organized within the function, and what is necessary. Not what they might want necessarily, but what's necessary for the work that's being done by that HR.
So you actually mentioned the remote work. I'm curious, what's your take on remote work?
I got to say that I am a fan of the hybrid, and here's why. I understand that non-customer facing roles could very well be done anywhere, and it could be remote. Absolutely. I do not argue that one bit. I do, however, see a lot of value on having that interaction face to face, and for various reasons. one of the reasons really is, and I will speak for myself on that one, to have that human interaction. And yes, you can say you have that human interaction virtually through a camera, but can we talk about the health aspect for 5 seconds and just talk about how unhealthy it is that you're staring at your screen day in and day out all the time, and you're on video all the time. And perhaps especially if you're working from home, right, you confined to the space the entire time, and there's no barrier or split between your work life and your home life. It is a lot harder to have that separation if your home space and your office space are essentially the same. And so there is something to be said about the healthy balance of saying, I am leaving the office and I have that decompressing time of driving home or taking the train or taking the bus, really that commuting time to get home. And then you get home and this is your home life. This is your personal time. This is your time for yourself or with your family or with your friends or with your pets or with your plant. And that's your time. There's something to be said about that separation, which you don't get when it's all the same. You wake up in the morning, you shower, you get ready, you sit in front of your computer. Your kitchen is there. If you have pets, your pets are in there. If you have kids in the house, they're there. There's no separation. And so it becomes easier and easier to have one thing bleed into the other. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've been working so much later than I typically would have had I been in the office, because I'm home. I don't have to commute. I don't have to worry about what time I'm leaving the office to commute. Or perhaps I didn't even realize how late it was because I'm home anyway. And so you don't feel it as much. And again, on the other hand, you think about the office space where you're having those, water cooler conversations. You get up to get a cup of coffee and you have that interaction with another human being. You get your mind out of that screen for a second. You're not staring at the screen the whole time. You have real interactions and you can make those bridges. You can make those connections with your colleagues and that camaraderie that make life rich, right? And so I honestly could argue both ways. My mom always told me from when I was a child I should be a lawyer, because ever since I was a kid, I would always argue both ways and I would drive her crazy. And so, yeah, I can make an argument for all three options. But personally, I'm a big fan of the hybrid work schedule because it does allow for that interaction. It does allow for that flexibility, especially for folks who have personal matters that need attention and need that flexibility, whether it's daycare or whatnot. And so that's my personal preference, is that hybrid work environment. Nonetheless, I can see value in both.
Now, we are talking about your team composition, how they work. Do you have any specific methodology that you apply to the teams that you work with?
So different organizations have different methods to look at that, right? Some organizations have a preset schedule and they will say 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, or, 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. And so each organization finds their own balance to do that. I'm a big fan of structure and standardization. And again, you have anybody who's ever worked with me or who works with me now, they'll tell you it's standard, right? And so my preference really is, and my go-to is usually to say, here's the structure, here's the standard, and do you have any challenge, right? And so then it is up to the person to present whatever challenges they might have with that. So far, I have not seen the case where there's a challenge personally, but I have heard from other colleagues to where the standard within the organization was to work from home to work in the office Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then Tuesday and Thursday, the employees would work from home. And the feedback I've heard from those other colleagues has really been the fact that school activities really sometimes take place on, say, on a Friday, for example. And so the employees would say, well, typically those activities are happening on a Friday. So it would make more sense if I was working from home on a Friday, because I could at least work that out a little bit easier than trying to rush from the office to the school in heavy traffic and worrying about whether or not I'm going to make it. And so I've seen feedback on how the standard sometimes is a little challenging. I've also, and I'm always networking and checking with colleagues and hearing what's the latest and greatest. And I have also heard the challenge with not having that standard where each employee wants to pick their own schedule. I can understand the value of it. My challenge with that approach is that it becomes messy. It becomes challenging to manage, especially, again, in the customer-facing role. So if there is a meeting with the customers, your internal customers, and you need to be physically there for that because there is either a presentation, a networking event, whatever the case might be that requires a physical presence, as a manager, as a leader, I'm now trying to figure out, okay, who is in the office that day versus who is working from home versus, again, standardization. There's something to be said about that. I'm a big fan of structure and standardization, and I'll be the first one to say, put some order in the house. We know exactly who is here, who is not, when, and how, so that we can improve and streamline how we approach those face-to-face interactions.
Is there a software or technology platform, whatever you call it, that you are currently using or you would like to recommend to other HR professionals?
I have used a variety of technologies and software companies. What I would say is, I could not make a plugin for any specific company, to be honest. And the reason for that really is because each company has their own strengths and weaknesses. And every so often I'll hear HR professionals say, you have to use PeopleSoft. I mean, this is it. Nothing else counts. Nothing else matters. I've heard colleagues say SAP is the best thing on the planet. And it goes on and on, right? You have Workday, you have all those softwares available out there. But the reality is, again, this is my opinion, right? You will have a ton of HR professionals disagreeing with that, which is fine. Everybody's got their opinion. My opinion in my experience has been that different organizations have different needs. And so I have a hard time saying this is one software that is the best of all, because each organization has their different needs. Organizations that don't require a whole lot of personalization really do not need to be paying top dollar for softwares. They are very expensive, and I'm being very careful to not name it because I definitely don't want any of those companies to go, oh my God, you were trashing my software. But if you're out there looking, you can see the price tag, right, on all the softwares. And if you look at the most expensive brands, most expensive organizations and companies providing HR software services, they offer a load of customization options, and they're very expensive for a reason. But not every organization needs that. And I have worked for organizations that would pay top dollar for those very expensive softwares and for those services, but they would not use half of what's available to them because guess what? They don't need. So you're paying for a lot of stuff that you really don't need. So it would be the equivalent of buying, say, a G6, or you're buying a jet. Do you need a jet? It's nice. It's expensive. You can say, aha, I have a jet. Do you need it? You don't. So maybe buy a Honda, right? That will take you from point A to point B. If you're buying a car and you're thinking about, okay, well, I really want a sports car that's a 2-door, but you have 5 kids. Is that realistic? No, you're going to need at the very least an SUV, right? And so it is really trying to understand, what are you paying for? And so when it comes to software, there are a lot of good softwares out there, and I've worked with a number of them. I've worked with SAP, I've worked with ADP, I've worked with PeopleSoft and Workday, and I can name a load of them. And again, they each have their strengths and their weaknesses. It really just comes down to, what does the organization need? And most of the larger software companies really focus on selling that giant bag of products, and the organization doesn't need it. And so organizations that are offering more of a tailored approach, mix and match, they tend to be more successful. The challenge with the mix and match is it's hard for them to meet organizational needs when it comes to a global organization. And that's where the higher price tag software companies kind of come ahead. They're able to accommodate the needs of a global organization. But again, you're going to be paying for items that you're likely not using. And the moment that you get a taste of the items that you're not using and you think this is wonderful, that's the moment when you now have to customize, and now you're paying to customize. So you're already paying a high price tag and you're paying to customize. It's a hamster wheel. You got to keep pedaling. You're not coming off of that wheel. You're going to continue to pedal. You're going to continue to. So again, there's no softwares out there. Like I've said a few options. They're great softwares. I've worked with them. But in the end, my best advice is look at the needs and look at what they offer and focus on that versus the actual brand name.
All right. And what do you think that would be improved in the HR industry?
From a general standpoint, one improvement that we need to see within the HR community in general, the HR function in general, regardless of the organization you're sitting at. One thing that we need to improve on is really to understand what value the HR function brings to the business, right? How do we advocate for the organization? How do we advocate for the function when we don't know what value that brings? And so it's very important. And I understand smaller companies have different needs. And so likely with the smaller companies, you're going to have an HR person who does a little bit of everything. Is that truly an HR professional? Maybe. Maybe you hired a true HR professional, but then you have that person doing a lot of work that really has nothing to do with HR. Is that person in the best position to provide the best support for your business? That's challenging. But that HR professional needs to understand what that means to be able to advocate for the function within the organization. Large organizations have a better understanding of that, but still need to understand the place of the organization. The organization I'm currently working with, we have recently gone through a whole reset and relook into how we're structured, how we organize, what kind of value we're providing to the business, and even internally, how we are providing value for ourselves, right? And so to understand that, it was very important for us to look at what are we paying for, right? And so going back to the car, I love cars, by the way. So if you keep hearing me making car analogies, that's why I love cars. And so going back to the car analogy, right? If I told you that I'm going to sell you a Honda Civic and told you that it's going to cost $80,000, you're going to tell me I'm out of my money. You're not going to pay $80,000 for a Honda Civic. It's not going to happen, right? Why would you do that? You know it doesn't cost that much. However, from a organizational standpoint, from a function standpoint, we tend to do that, right? We tend to overpay for things that really do not cost that much. At the same time, we look ahead. If you go to a Bentley dealership and you say, you know what, I want to buy a Bentley, I have $40,000, they're going to say you out of your mind. You can't. Like, that's not enough money. How do you expect to walk in here with $40,000 and ask me to just hand you it? It's not going to happen, right? And so we do that within the business and within the function. And so we tend to hire folks who are very high caliber. And then we say, but I only want to pay this. You cannot have high caliber. You cannot have a Bentley for $40,000. It's not going to happen, right? Or we hire somebody that don't have a whole lot of experience, and we give them a fancy title and we load them up with money, and they're fumbling because they don't have the experience to back that up. They're struggling. There's not enough structure in place within the organization to even help them get to the point where they need to do that. And we just create a bit of a mess, right? What else happens within organizations? And I hope I'm not the only person who can relate to this. So I hope more people listening can relate to this too. But it happens sometimes that, yes, you will hire somebody that is very high caliber. You will pay them what the value of that knowledge is. But then you might have them do something that really doesn't cost that much. So it's poor allocation of resources. I'll give you an example. If you hire somebody with a master's degree, would you really have them shuffle paper all day? No, you can hire somebody with a high school diploma to do that. It's going to cost you less, right? And so proper allocation of resources make a huge impact on the business. How so? Well, guess what? The money to pay for all those salaries is coming from the business. The HR function tends to be a cost center, not a profit center. We can turn it into a profit center if we operate properly, and even that is debatable, but it's mostly a cost center, right? So the organization is producing whatever product it is or selling whatever they sell, services. That money is then spent on a number of things, one of which being supporting the HR function. And so if we're telling the organization we have a lot of value to add, we need to show that we are making good use of the money provided, right? So in other words, not paying $80,000 for a Honda. In other words, not buying a Bentley, paying full price for that, and then let it fit in the garage. It's a Bentley. You want to drive that, right? And so I cannot tell you throughout my experience, throughout my career, how many times I've seen high caliber folks, high experience, smart, intelligence, business savvy, great resources could be adding to the company tremendously, but they're put in positions where they do nothing but repeatable work day in and day out. And so we're not extracting that amazing intelligence and talent that they're bringing to the table because we're kind of pushing them in a corner to say, go shuffle paper. We could be doing so much more if we had that person really in a role where they can be looking at the big picture and drawing out big plans and driving impactful projects for the organization through the HR function. And so that's where I believe we need to get better at, is really understanding where we're allocating our resources. Are we wasting our talent? Are we overpaying for talent? Are we underpaying for talent? We need to look at that a little bit better. In general, as an HR community across the U.S., I would argue across the globe. I don't have a full picture of the full globe, just a few countries here and there. But what I can tell you is that we tend to not do the best job at that. And in the U.S., we have a saying that says, the shoemaker's kids have no shoes, which essentially means you're making shoes for everybody, but you have not made any for yourself. And that's essentially what tends to happen. The HR function is helping everybody else draw up their development plans. We're helping everybody else gauge their talent, right? We're doing talent reviews. We're doing calibrations. We're doing 9 blocks. We're helping everybody do that, but we're not doing that for ourselves. And we need to start doing that for ourselves, if anything, so that we can continue to grow talent and help with employee retention from an HR function standpoint. If a highly capable HR professional is being asked to do repeatable work, what I call shuffle paper, and insert here whatever equivalent of shuffle paper is within your organization, that person is going to eventually realize that they're wasting their talent. They're not using all of that experience they have acquired throughout the years, and it's not worth it. There's no amount of money in the world that can make up for you being able to say, I'm using my expertise and I'm taking pride in what I do and I'm being recognized. So it isn't always about the money. So it's very important. Money counts, don't get me wrong, and it's important, but it's not always about the money. And it's important that we're able to look within our function to understand that.
So we are coming to the end of this episode, and I wanted to know how difficult or how was your experience working with the technology team that was at your disposal in the companies that you have been working on for the past few years?
So different organizations have different needs, and they don't always have a fully set up IT or IS department, right? Whenever there is one set up, I would say they can become your best friend. Again, when it comes to HR needs, I see the future of HR being more technology driven. And there's a lot of focus on self-service environment. And I know there will some people watching or listening will probably roll their eyes, but hear me out, bear with me. Self-service does not mean that we just abandon people. And it's not about the people anymore. We're still called human resources. There's a human piece in there for a reason, right? But really there's a focus on what can employees do for themselves and how do we enable them to do that through technology. So working with the HR department, working IS and HR or IT and HR working together is very important to drive that advancement. So over the next few years, where I see the HR function going is really driving more towards technological advances a little bit more, focusing on systems a little bit more robust systems that are designed for a user-friendly experience with employees versus the HR professionals who understand HR, speak HR language to drive that on their behalf.
So let me ask you the last few things. How do you see yourself in the next few years?
I really don't think you can answer that question, honestly, because every time that I thought, in 5 years, this is what I'm going to be doing, things change. So I would say, set goals for yourself. Obviously, I want to continue to progress in my career. I want to continue to learn more, especially in the HR technology realm. I am a huge fan of HR technology. And so I continue to learn more about that. And so I want to continue to do that. That's one of my goals. But I would not say in 5 years, I will be the chief HR technology officer anywhere. I won't, because things change and we need to be open to the idea that, I'm very focused on HR technology today, but things might change and I might say, I'm really drawn to benefits. That could happen. So set goals for yourself, but don't limit yourself by that. And for some people, they might say this, I know exactly, and this is it. In 5 years, this is where I'm going to be. But I've seen enough in my career that I can tell you that things change very, very often. And the goals I had 5 years ago are not the same today. So be kind to yourself, set your goals, drive towards them, but be kind and flexible to yourself.
Cool. So let me ask you the last thing. What do you think that will be the impact of technology in HR in the future?
I believe the HR function will be more agile. And again, I can see more self-service coming into play in the future. We're going to be able to drive better analytics. If we're going to truly support business, and again, walking away from the idea of I'm going to help you fill out your application into how do we drive business success? A lot of that comes from good data, good analytics, and technology supports that a lot. And so I can see better systems in place to help with analytics and business projection, help even the HR function drive better conclusions on workforce planning because of that. And so I honestly see that being a lot of the focus. Technology, self-service, data analytics, driving business results that way.
All right, Diane. Thank you for your time in the podcast. We really appreciate it. So yeah, it was great having you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I hope you all enjoyed it.